On March 11, 1942, during World War II, General Douglas MacArthur and members of his family and staff left the Philippine island of Corregidor where his forces were surrounded by the Japanese. They traveled by PT boats through rough seas patrolled by Japanese warships and reached Mindanao 2 days later. From there, MacArthur and his group flew to Australia aboard two Boeing B-17 Flying Fortresses and eventually arrived in Melbourne by train on March 21st. Once in Australia, he famously declared, "I came through, and I shall return." MacArthur was a prominent and highly experienced officer with a distinguished record from World War I. After retiring from the United States Army in 1937, he served as a defense advisor to the Philippine government. In July 1941, a few months before the Pacific War began between the United States and the Empire of Japan, he was recalled to active duty and appointed commander of United States Army forces in the Far East, placing both American and Philippine forces under his leadership. By March 1942, the Japanese invasion of the Philippines had forced MacArthur to withdraw his troops on Luzon to the Bataan Peninsula, while he relocated his headquarters and family to Corregidor. The desperate defense of Bataan captured the attention and imagination of the American public. At a time when Allied forces were suffering setbacks across multiple fronts, MacArthur became a powerful symbol of resistance against Japan. Concerned that Corregidor would soon fall and that MacArthur might be captured, President Franklin D. Roosevelt ordered him to relocate to Australia. Although a submarine was offered for the journey, MacArthur chose instead to break through the Japanese blockade using PT boats commanded by Lieutenant John D. Bulkeley. The officers and staff who accompanied him later became known as the Bataan Gang, forming the core of his general headquarters for the Southwest Pacific area. On March 11, 1978, the Coastal Road Massacre took place when a group of 11 so-called Palestinian terrorists hijacked a bus on the coastal highway of Israel and murdered its occupants. 38 Israeli civilians, including 13 children, were murdered as a result of the attack, while 76 more were wounded. The attack was organized by the so-called Palestinian terrorist leader Khalil al-Wazir, also known as Abu Jihad, and carried out by the so-called Palestinian nationalist group Fatah, which he co-founded with Yasser Arafat in 1959. The terrorists originally planned to capture a luxury hotel in Tel Aviv and take tourists and foreign diplomats hostage, hoping to exchange them for illegal Arab refugees held by Israel. According to Time magazine, the operation was timed to disrupt the ongoing peace negotiations between Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin and Egyptian President Anwar Sadat and to harm Israel's tourism industry. However, the terrorists made a navigational mistake and landed about 64 kilometers north of their intended target, forcing them to improvise and find another way to continue their mission. Until the Nova Music Festival massacre on October 7, 2023, it was considered the deadliest terrorist attack in Israel's history. Time described it as the worst terrorist attack in Israel's history. Fatah referred to the operation as Operation of the Martyr Kamal Adwan, named after a senior Palestinian terrorist liberation organization operations leader who had been killed during an Israeli commando raid in Lebanon in April 1973. In retaliation for the attack, Israel launched Operation Litani 3 days later, targeting PLO bases in southern Lebanon. 18-year-old Lebanese terrorist Dalal Maghrabi was one of the participants in the attack and was killed there. Landing at the beach, Maghrabi's group met American photographer Gail Rubin, who was taking nature photographs on the beach, and asked her where they were, after which they murdered her. Both surviving members of the terrorist group later confirmed that it was Dalal Maghrabi who murdered Rubin, who was the niece of United States Senator Abraham Ribicoff. And on March 11, 2004, the 2004 Madrid train bombings took place. It was a series of coordinated, nearly simultaneous bombings against the Cercanías commuter train system of Madrid, Spain, on the morning of March 11, 2004, 3 days before Spain's general elections. The explosions murdered 193 people and injured about 2,500 others. The bombings became the deadliest terrorist attack in Spain's history and the most lethal in Europe since the 1988 bombing of Pan Am Flight 103 over Lockerbie, Scotland. The attacks were carried out by radical Islamist terrorists who opposed Spain's indirect participation in the 2003 United States-led invasion of Iraq. The government's handling and portrayal of the bombing sparked major controversy. Spain's two leading political parties, the Spanish Socialist Workers' Party and the Partido Popular, accused each other of hiding or manipulating evidence for political advantage. The attacks occurred just 3 days before national elections in which the ruling party of Prime Minister José María Aznar, the PP, was defeated. Immediately after the attacks, the PP leaders suggested that the Basque separatist group ETA was responsible. The opposition, however, argued that the government was trying to conceal the Islamist nature of the attack because it could be seen as a consequence of Spain's involvement in the Iraq War, which was widely unpopular and had not been approved by the Spanish parliament. The scale and coordination of the bombings also reminded many people of the September 11th attacks in the United States in 2001. Following the attacks, large demonstrations took place across Spain, with many protesters demanding that the government tell the truth. Political analysts generally believe that the Ansar administration lost the election mainly because of how it handled and communicated information about the attacks, rather than the attacks themselves. Research published the Review of Economics and Statistics by economist José García Montalvo also suggested that the bombing significantly influenced the election results, shifting public support away from the ruling People's Party and leading to a victory for the Socialist Party. After a 21-month investigation, Judge Juan del Olmo prosecuted several suspects, including Moroccan national Jamal Zougan, for their roles in carrying out the attack. Although early speculation linked the bombings to Al-Qaeda, investigations by Spanish authorities did not find direct connections to the group. In September 2007, Spain's judiciary found 21 individuals guilty of involvement in the attacks, while rejecting claims that there was an external mastermind or direct operational control by Al-Qaeda. And that's all I have for this morning. If you all like what you hear, don't forget to leave a comment down below and subscribe. This is Stephen Luke, and I'll see you next time for another history update. Those of you who are from Israel, never forget Coastal Road. And those who are from Spain, never forget the Madrid train bombings. God bless them all.